2 years I defended a cheater. Then, fell in love with his best friend. I didn't see it coming until it was almost too late. The truth hit me the moment I finally let go. My boyfriend ended up cheating on me with his roommate. The same girl he always swore was basically like a sister to him. Nothing more. Somehow, I went from that situation to waking up in his best friend's bed with his grandmother's ring sitting on my finger. And yeah, it felt just as insane as it sounds. I'd been with Marcus for about 2 years, and the whole time people kept warning me that I deserved better than him. I always brushed it off, thinking they were just being jealous or didn't understand what we had. Marcus worked as a bartender and spent his weekends playing guitar in a cover band. He also lived with this girl, Renee, who he constantly insisted was like family to him. Like a sister, he said, over and over again. But honestly, the way she acted around him didn't feel very sister-like. She'd walk around their apartment wrapped in nothing but a towel, make him breakfast while wearing just her underwear, and during movie nights, she'd casually sit right on his lap like it was totally normal. Every time I brought it up, Marcus would flip it on me and say I was being insecure, overthinking things, or just straight up crazy for finding it weird. If Renee had a rough day at work, Marcus would cancel our plans without a second thought. There were nights he'd literally leave my place in the middle of the night just because she needed someone to talk to about her ex. When I got promoted at my accounting firm, something I'd worked really hard for, Marcus didn't even bother to congratulate me. He said he forgot because Renee had gotten a parking ticket and was upset about it. Still, I stayed. I loved him, and I kept telling myself that relationships aren't easy, that they take effort, patience, and compromise. His best friend Owen, though, he saw right through it. He kept trying to tell me Marcus wasn't worth everything I was putting into him. Owen owned a small construction company, and somehow he was always the one who showed up when Marcus let me down. Like the time Marcus forgot to pick me up from the airport because Renee wanted to go shopping, or when he ditched me at one of his band shows because she felt sick and needed him. Owen would just show up out of nowhere with coffee and a ride, like it was no big deal. He never talked trash about Marcus, not once, but he'd always look at me and ask if I was okay, like he already knew the answer. I ended up telling Owen to back off a little and stop worrying so much about me, because as far as I was concerned, Marcus and I were doing just fine. Owen didn't push it. He just nodded and said he'd be there if I ever needed him, no questions asked. Not long after that, Marcus started acting strange anytime Owen's name came up. He'd go on about how Owen was clearly trying to take me from him, saying guys like that were dangerous, the kind who pretend to be nice just to get close. I tried standing up for Owen, but Marcus shut it down fast, telling me I was too trusting and didn't see what was obvious. According to him, Owen had one goal, and it wasn't friendship. After a while, I just stopped mentioning Owen altogether, especially when he helped me, because I didn't have the energy for another argument. Then came last Friday. Marcus's band had their biggest gig so far, some downtown venue they'd been hyping up for weeks. I actually made an effort, bought a new outfit, even invited a couple of my friends to come out and support him. Marcus casually mentioned that Renee would be there too, saying she was basically acting as their manager, even though that didn't really make sense to me. I showed up early, wanting to be close to the stage, and noticed his car was already parked outside. I figured I'd go surprise him before the show, wish him luck or whatever. Big mistake! I walked into the green room and there they were. Renee straddling him, both of them barely dressed, like I wasn't even supposed to exist. Marcus looked at me, completely caught, and still had the nerve to act like there was some explanation that would fix it. Meanwhile, Renee just looked at me with this smug little smile and made some comment about finally understanding why Marcus kept me around, like I was some kind of backup plan. Marcus jumped in right away, talking fast, saying it wasn't a big deal, that she was just helping him loosen up before going on stage, and that I was blowing things out of proportion, again. That was it for me. I didn't argue, didn't yell, I just walked out. I went straight across the street to a bar and started knocking back tequila like I was trying to erase the last 2 years of my life. Because in that moment, it hit me all at once. I'd been wasting my time on a guy who'd probably been messing around with his roommate from the very beginning. About an hour later, Owen walked in. He told me Marcus had already spun the story in their group chat, saying I'd lost it, and stormed out for no reason at all. Owen already knew Marcus's version of the story was complete nonsense, so he came out to find me himself. By the time he got there, I was a total mess, crying, drunk, and going on about how stupid I'd been for missing something that everyone else had clearly seen all along. He kept trying to get me to slow down and eat something, but I wouldn't listen. I just kept ordering more drinks, like that was somehow going to fix anything. I vaguely remember telling him he'd been right about Marcus from the start, and that I should have listened to him instead of defending Marcus all the time. At some point, I tried to grab my phone to call Marcus, and Owen gently tried to take it from me so I wouldn't make things worse. The next thing I remember clearly is being out in the parking lot, getting sick, while Owen held my hair back and stayed right there with me. After that, everything just goes blank. When I finally woke up, I was in a bed I didn't recognize, wearing an oversized t-shirt with Henderson Construction printed across the front, the name of Owen's company. I looked around and saw Owen passed out on the floor beside the bed, with nothing but a pillow and a blanket, like he hadn't even considered taking the bed himself. On the nightstand, there was a glass of water, some aspirin, and a couple pieces of toast, already gone a little cold, like he'd set them there sometime before he finally let himself fall asleep, just in case I woke up before him. And then I noticed the ring on my finger. It wasn't anything romantic or flashy. It was his grandmother's old ring, a simple gold band with a small stone, the kind she'd apparently gotten as a graduation gift decades ago and passed down to him. He always wore it on his pinky. I pushed myself up, still groggy and confused, and the second I moved, Owen woke up like he hadn't really been sleeping at all. First thing he asked was whether I was about to get sick again. I asked him what exactly happened and why I was wearing his ring. He told me I'd been trying to call Marcus over and over all night, so at some point he handed me his ring to keep my hands busy instead of my phone. Apparently, I refused to give it back after that. He even said I kept mumbling that the ring looked better than anything Marcus had ever given me, which, honestly, wasn't saying much, since Marcus had never really given me anything in the first place. Owen made it clear he stayed on the floor the whole night after making sure I was okay, and that nothing happened between us. He even mentioned that his sister was in the guest room if I wanted proof. He'd called her to come over so I wouldn't wake up alone with him and get the wrong idea. A few minutes later, his sister Paige came in holding coffee and backed up everything he said. She told me Owen hadn't left the floor once, and that she'd been checking on me every hour through the night. She also said he'd been seriously worried about me, and that he kept saying he should have warned me about Marcus a long time ago. I asked her what she meant by that, because something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Paige didn't hesitate. She told me straight up that Owen had known for at least 6 months that Marcus had been sleeping with Renee. The only reason he never said anything, she explained, was because he didn't want it to look like he was trying to come between us or break us apart. Right in the middle of that conversation, my phone started ringing. It was Marcus. I answered, and instead of anything close to an apology, he immediately went off on me. He said I'd embarrassed him by causing a scene at his show, and that Renee was upset because I'd apparently invaded their space. Their space. Then, he actually said that if I was willing to apologize to Renee and accept the way their relationship worked, we might still be able to fix things. I just stood there for a second, holding the phone, trying to process what I was hearing. Then, I glanced over at Owen, who was at the stove pretending not to listen while making breakfast, like none of this had anything to do with him. I looked down at my hand, at his grandmother's ring, still sitting on my finger. For a second, everything felt weirdly clear. I told Owen I needed to call Marcus back and end things properly, like I should have done the night before. Owen glanced at me over the top of his coffee cup and calmly suggested I eat something first. He said big decisions shouldn't be made on an empty stomach, especially after the kind of night I'd just had. Before I could respond, Paige walked back in, carrying a plate stacked with pancakes, and set it down right in front of me. She smiled a little and said that drunk me had been something else the night before. Apparently, I'd been holding up Owen's ring like it was a trophy, telling anyone who would listen that it was nicer than anything Marcus had ever given me, which, to be fair, wasn't exactly a high bar. She added that I'd refused to give it back, clutching it to my chest and insisting it belonged to me now. Owen looked a little awkward hearing that, and just said I could keep the ring for as long as I wanted. I turned it slowly on my finger, noticing how light I felt. Like something heavy I'd been carrying around for years had finally been lifted off me. Then I picked up my phone and played Marcus's voicemail on speaker. His voice came through loud and irritated, sharp enough to cut through the room. He repeated the same thing, that I'd embarrassed him at his show, that I'd made a scene, and that Renee was upset because I'd crossed a line by stepping into their space. Their space. He really said that, like it made perfect sense. Marcus went on to say that if I apologized to both him and Renee, and just accepted the way their relationship worked, then maybe we could figure things out. The way he said it, you'd think he was doing me some huge favor, like I should feel lucky he was even willing to take me back after I caught him cheating. I could see Owen's jaw tighten as he listened from across the room. Paige, on the other hand, muttered something under her breath about Marcus being completely out of his mind. I looked over at Owen, really looked at him this time, and it hit me all at once. For 2 years, he'd been the one showing up for me, over and over again, while Marcus couldn't even do the bare minimum, like picking me up from the airport. When Marcus left me stranded, Owen was the one who showed up with coffee. When Marcus didn't even bother to congratulate me on my promotion, Owen was the one who actually listened and cared. While Marcus was off doing whatever he wanted with Renee, Owen was the one who was actually there for me. That's when I picked up my phone and called Marcus back. He answered immediately, like he'd been waiting, and started talking right away about how glad he was that I'd finally come to my senses. I didn't let him finish. I cut him off and told him we were done. I said he could keep whatever messed up situation he had going on with Renee because I wasn't going to be a part of it anymore. His tone flipped instantly, from smug to angry in a heartbeat. He started saying I was overreacting, just like I always did, and that I knew how important Renee was to him. He even tried to claim that I'd agreed to be understanding about their friendship. The only thing I'd ever agreed to was being lied to and disrespected for 2 straight years. Marcus kept going, saying I was throwing everything away over nothing, like this was all some kind of misunderstanding. I didn't stick around to hear the rest. I hung up on him mid-sentence. When I looked back up, Owen was clearly trying to hide a smile, like he didn't want to make it about him. Paige didn't bother holding back at all. She actually cheered and said she'd been waiting 2 years for me to finally dump that guy. She reached across the table and smacked my hand in a high five, grinning like we'd just won something. She said this kind of moment called for celebration pancakes, which, according to her, weren't normal pancakes. They tasted like freedom and better life choices. Right then, I remembered something important. I still had a key to Marcus's place, and he still had one to mine. There was no way around it. We needed to swap everything back before this turned into an even bigger mess. Owen didn't hesitate. He said he was coming with me. No discussion, because there was no way he was letting me deal with Marcus alone. Paige jumped in right after and said she'd head over to my apartment instead. Just in case Marcus showed up there trying to grab his stuff or start something, she wanted to be there. She even said she'd been waiting for a reason to finally tell Marcus exactly what she thought of him. We finished eating, and I changed into some of Paige's clothes. Since mine from the night before smelled like straight tequila and regret. Owen grabbed his truck keys, and a few minutes later, we were on the road. The drive over felt different. Usually, I'd be overthinking everything, wondering what kind of mood Marcus would be in, whether he'd be cold or sweet, whether Renee would be there making little comments. This time, none of that was there. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel anxious. I just felt done. When we pulled into the lot, Marcus's car was already sitting there, like nothing had changed. Owen killed the engine and looked over at me, asking if I wanted him to come up. I didn't even hesitate. I told him yeah. I knew exactly how Marcus worked, and I wasn't about to give him a chance to twist things around if I went up there alone. We headed upstairs together and stopped outside the door. I knocked, already knowing there was a good chance she'd be the one to answer. And she did. Renee opened the door, wearing one of Marcus's shirts, nothing else, and had that same smug look on her face, like she thought this was some kind of victory. I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I just held out Marcus's key toward her and told her I was there for my stuff. She leaned into the doorway like she owned the place and said Marcus had already dropped everything off at my apartment about an hour ago. Then she added, real casual, that he figured I'd cool off and come crawling back once I realized what I was about to lose, which apparently didn't stop him from already packing my stuff into trash bags before I'd even had the chance to cool off. That was Marcus, though. He wanted it both ways. Punish me for leaving and still act certain I'd come crawling back for more. That's when I actually looked at her, really looked, and asked her straight, without any emotion, what exactly do you think I'm losing here? Renee didn't even hesitate. Her smile got bigger, like she'd been waiting for that moment. She said I was giving up a guy who actually knew how to enjoy life, not someone stuck being boring and jealous all the time. Before I could say anything back, Owen stepped forward, just enough to put an end to it. His voice was calm, but firm. He said we were leaving. As we walked away, Renee threw one last comment after us, saying Marcus would be way better off without someone as uptight as me. I didn't stop. Didn't turn around. It just didn't matter anymore. We got back in the truck and headed to my apartment, and the second we pulled up, I saw it. A pile of black trash bags sitting right outside my door. For a second, I just stared at them, not even wanting to believe it. But yeah, Marcus had packed up everything I had at his place and dumped it outside like it didn't mean anything. Like I didn't mean anything. Paige was already there, dragging the bags inside one by one. She looked beyond angry, like she was ready to go back over there and start a fight herself. She said she couldn't believe he'd stooped that low. We brought everything in, and I started going through it. It was obvious he hadn't cared at all. My clothes were stuffed in carelessly, wrinkled beyond fixing. Some of my books had bent covers, like they'd been shoved in without a second thought. My stuff from his bathroom? Just tossed in, no caps on anything. So shampoo, lotion, all of it had leaked and soaked into everything else. Then I came across the only things he'd ever actually given me in 2 years. A cheap necklace from some random mall stand, a joke coffee mug that wasn't even funny, and a keychain from one of his band's gigs. They were all gone. He'd taken them back like they were worth something. I just kind of sat there for a second, holding nothing, when Owen quietly pointed out that his grandmother's ring was still on my hand. He said I didn't have to give it back. Not now, not ever. Only if I wanted to. I turned it slightly on my finger, and for some reason, that small thing felt heavier, in a good way, than anything Marcus had ever given me. Then my phone started ringing. It was Nadia from work. She said word had already gotten around about what happened at the show, and she wanted to check on me. So I told her everything. Not the short version, the real version. Walking in on Marcus and Renee, drinking too much, waking up at Owen's place, all of it. She didn't sound shocked, not even a little. She just said she'd never trusted Marcus, not from the start, and that I deserved way better than a guy who couldn't even do something as basic as remember my promotion. She told me the whole office had already been talking about Marcus not showing up to the company party I invited him to last month, all because Renee needed help moving furniture. According to Nadia, people noticed. They just didn't say anything to me, because I always looked like I was fine, like everything was good. I told her the truth for once. I wasn't fine. I hadn't been for a long time. I'd just gotten really good at making excuses for him. Nadia didn't miss a beat. She said I needed to get out of my apartment and be around people who actually cared about me, so she invited me over for dinner with a few coworkers. She made it clear this wasn't optional. I needed it. I asked what time, and she said 6 o'clock. Then she added that I should bring Owen too, if he was up for it. I looked over at him. He was helping Paige fold my clothes the right way and putting everything back where it belonged, like it was just normal for him to be doing that. I asked if he wanted to come with me. He just shrugged a little and said he would, if I wanted him there. We finished getting my place back in order, and then Owen drove me across town to Nadia's apartment. The place was nice, way nicer than mine. It had a pool, real parking, the kind of place that felt put together. We walked up to her door, and I knocked. The second Nadia opened it, she pulled me straight into a hug like she'd been waiting for me all day. Then she noticed Owen standing behind me, grabbed his arm, and pulled him inside too without hesitation. She laughed and said anyone who treated me the way he did was more than welcome in her home. Inside, there were 4 women from work already sitting around the table. It was covered in pizza boxes and open bottles of wine, like they'd already started without us. Nadia introduced me, Courtney from Accounts Payable, Priya from Tax Prep, and Simone from HR. Owen kind of lingered near the door, looking a little out of place, until Nadia grabbed him again and dragged him over to the couch like he didn't have a choice. Before anyone could settle, Courtney jumped right into a story about her ex. Apparently, he'd maxed out 3 different credit cards buying gifts. Not for her, but for the girl he was cheating with. Priya rolled her eyes and said her ex once claimed he had a last-minute conference in Vegas. Turned out, he'd taken a co-worker to Hawaii instead and forgot to turn off his location. Simone didn't even bother joking about hers. She said her ex asked to borrow her car to visit his sick mom. A week later, she found crumpled receipts in the console. Hotel, cocktails, dinner for 2. Not exactly a hospital visit. By then, the attention had shifted to me. I took a breath and told them what happened. No soft version, no skipping details. Just the truth. Walking into that room and realizing I'd been completely played. Courtney let out a sharp laugh and said, "Yeah, no, he's absolute trash." Priya leaned forward, frowning. "Wait, how long has that girl been living with him?" 2 years, I said. The whole time we were together. That landed hard. No one interrupted right away. Simone finally spoke, slower this time. "That's not something you work through. That's something you leave." I nodded, staring at my glass. I know that now, but back then, he always had an explanation. And somehow, I was the one who ended up apologizing. Nadia came over with the wine bottle, topping everyone up like she'd done this before. "That's how guys like him operate," she said. They don't just lie, they make you question your own reaction to the lie. I let that sit for a second. It felt uncomfortably accurate. Across the room, Owen hadn't said a word. He was on the couch, phone in hand, but not really engaged with it. Just there. Quiet. Steady. Courtney followed my glance and smirked. So, what's going on there? I shook my head immediately. Nothing. At the exact same time, Owen looked up and said, nothing. The timing made it awkward enough that Nadia just gave me a look over her glass, half amused, half skeptical. The topic drifted after that, but I couldn't quite focus on anything else. Every now and then, I'd catch Owen watching me, like he was making sure I was okay, without asking out loud. The next week felt like a reset I didn't know how to handle. I stayed late at work most nights, taking on extra reports just so I wouldn't have to go back to an apartment that suddenly felt too quiet. Owen started texting me every morning. Simple things. Coffee? You good? Need anything? Paige checked in too, inviting me over for dinner more than once, like she wasn't going to let me disappear into my own head. And then there was Marcus. At first it was one message, then 5, then paragraphs. Not apologies, just blame. He said I'd embarrassed him, said I'd made a scene right before the most important show his band had ever played, said I had a habit of ruining things when they didn't go my way. Then he started comparing. Renee understood him. Renee supported him. Renee didn't make everything difficult. Like respect meant staying quiet. Like loyalty meant putting up with anything he decided to do. I read the messages. I just didn't answer. Marcus's messages didn't slow down. They got worse. At first it was just complaints. Then full-on rants about how his bandmates were turning on him, how venue owners had heard about the incident, how everything was starting to fall apart. And somehow, according to him, it was all my fault. I didn't reply. I just deleted each message as it came in. But that didn't stop them. One night, I was at Owen's place, sitting on the floor of his half-finished bathroom, while he tried to decide between 2 different tile samples. It was calm, normal, something I hadn't felt in a while. Then my phone buzzed again. Another long message from Marcus. This time he said the band might actually break up, that nobody wanted to work with him anymore, that I'd ruined everything by making a scene and embarrassing him. I must have reacted without realizing it, because Owen looked over immediately. What is it? I handed him my phone. He read the message, his expression tightening with every line. By the time he finished, his jaw was set. Do you want me to talk to him? He asked. I shook my head. No, it won't help. Owen exhaled slowly, like he was holding back a lot more than he was saying. He doesn't get to blame you for something he caused. I know, I said, and I did know, but it still got under my skin. 3 days later, another message came through. This one was different, shorter, colder. Marcus said he might be willing to work things out if I posted a public apology. He wanted me to go on social media and say I overreacted, that I misunderstood what I saw, that there was nothing inappropriate going on between him and Renee. He said if I fixed his reputation, we could start over. I just stared at the screen. Something in me finally snapped, not in a loud, emotional way, just clean, clear. Owen was in the kitchen making breakfast when I walked in and handed him my phone. He read the message once, then again, like he couldn't believe it. His face flushed with anger. Are you serious? I thought about it for a second. About the last 2 years. The excuses. The doubt. The way I kept shrinking myself to keep the peace. And for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel hurt. I felt angry. Not messy, overwhelming anger. Just solid, steady certainty. I'm fine, I said. I'm just done. Right there, standing in his kitchen, I blocked Marcus's number. No hesitation. Owen watched me do it, then nodded, a small smile breaking through. Good. And just like that, the noise stopped. No more messages. No more guilt. No more waiting for the next excuse. I hadn't realized how heavy it all felt until it was gone. The next afternoon, Owen called me. His voice sounded lighter than usual. Hey, you want to come by my office? I figured you should meet the guy who deals with me every day. I laughed a little and said sure. A little while later, I pulled into the lot at Henderson Construction on the south side of town, not really sure what to expect, but feeling, for the first time in a while, like I was stepping into something new instead of trying to fix something broken. Owen's office was smaller than I expected, a simple building with a couple of trucks parked out front and tools stacked neatly along the side. He met me at the door and held it open, giving me a quick smile before leading me inside. The space was practical, A couple of desks, filing cabinets, and walls covered in blueprints and project timelines. It felt busy, but organized. The kind of place where things actually got done. A tall man with graying hair stood up as we walked in. He had that calm, steady presence that made you take him seriously right away. "This is Walter," Owen said. "My business partner." Walter shook my hand firmly and gave me a polite nod. At the other desk sat a woman with short dark hair, flipping through a stack of papers. She looked up the second we walked in. "And that's Marguerite," Owen added. "Walter's wife. She runs everything we'd mess up." Marguerite didn't even hesitate. She stood up, walked over, and pulled me into a hug like we'd known each other for years. "So, you're finally here," she said warmly. "I was starting to think you were a myth." I laughed a little, caught off guard, while Owen rubbed the back of his neck, clearly embarrassed. "She's heard about you," he muttered. "For years," Marguerite added, shooting him a look that made it obvious she wasn't going to let him downplay it. Walter chuckled under his breath and motioned for me to follow him. He walked me through the office, pointing out different plans pinned to the walls and explaining what they were working on. 3 houses in progress, 2 bathroom remodels starting soon. A steady flow of work that made it clear this wasn't just some side business. It was something solid. Meanwhile, Marguerite called out, asking if I wanted coffee. I said yes, and a minute later, she handed me a cup before casually telling Walter and Owen to go argue over blueprints or something. Owen gave me a quick glance, like he wasn't sure if he should stay, but Walter was already pulling him away. Marguerite led me into a small break room in the back. Just a table, a couple of chairs, nothing fancy. We sat across from each other. She didn't waste time. "There's something I think you should know," she said. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, suddenly very aware of how quiet it was back there. "Okay." She studied me for a second, like she was deciding how direct to be. Then she just said it. "Owen's been in love with you since the day you met." I blinked. Sure, I'd misheard her. "What?" She nodded like this was the most obvious thing in the world. "Marcus introduced you to, right? That day. He came back here afterward and didn't stop talking about you." I stared at her, my mind trying to catch up. "He never said anything," she continued, softer now, "because you were with Marcus, and Owen's not the kind of guy who crosses that line." I looked down at my coffee, my thoughts suddenly tangled. Marguerite leaned forward slightly. "But watching you stay in that relationship, watching the way Marcus treated you," she shook her head. "That was hard on him, harder than he'd ever admit." I didn't know what to say. "This past week," she went on, "with you around, at the house, here at the office, I haven't seen him like that in 2 years." "Like what?" I asked quietly. "Happy," she said simply. That word settled somewhere deep. I sat there, holding the cup, staring at nothing in particular. Everything felt different. Like I'd just been handed a piece of a story I didn't even realize I was part of. Marguerite reached across the table and patted my hand gently. "I'm not telling you what to do," she said. "I just think people deserve to know when someone cares about them like that." She gave me a small, knowing smile. Life's too short to stay in the dark about things that matter. Marguerite stood up like she hadn't just dropped something life-altering in my lap and walked back to her desk, already flipping through paperwork again. Meanwhile, I sat there, completely still, trying to process what she'd said. On the drive home, and over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And once I started looking at Owen differently, I couldn't unsee it. The little things came first. The way he showed up with coffee exactly how I liked it, without asking. The way he remembered details about my work, specific ones, and followed up days later like it actually mattered to him. The way he listened. Not just nodded along, but really listened, even when I was rambling about spreadsheets or tax codes. No glazed over expression, no checking his phone. Just attention. None of it was new. That was the part that got me. He'd been like this for 2 years. I'd just been too busy trying to hold together something broken with Marcus to notice what was steady, right in front of me. A few days later, I found myself sitting across from Owen at the coffee shop near my apartment. He had his laptop open, focused on something work-related, brow slightly furrowed. I wasn't even pretending to read my own screen anymore. I was watching him. He must have felt it, because he glanced up, and when he saw me looking at him, he smiled. It was simple, easy, and something in my chest shifted. Warm, quiet, certain. This didn't feel like what I'd had with Marcus. There was no anxiety, no guessing, no walking on eggshells. This felt safe. 2 weeks after everything ended, I was at the grocery store, standing in the produce section, trying to decide between two brands of strawberries when someone stopped their cart next to mine. I looked up and recognized him. Barely. Marcus's drummer. I could never remember his name. He gave me an awkward half smile. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. I blinked, caught off guard. Oh, thanks. He shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. Honestly, the whole band knew about Marcus and Renee. That hit differently. They did? I asked. He nodded. Yeah. And it sucked, watching how he treated you. Nobody really knew how to say anything, though. I didn't know whether to feel angry or relieved. Actually, he added, scratching the back of his neck, it's kind of a mess right now. Marcus has been impossible lately. Canceling practices, showing up late, blowing things off for Renee. He trailed off, then shrugged. Half the band wants to kick him out. But we've been together 5 years, so it's complicated. I let out a quiet breath. Sounds like it. I thanked him for saying something and started to push my cart past him, ready to end the conversation. But he reached out slightly, stopping me. Hey, wait, he said. There's one more thing you should probably know. I paused. He hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he should say it. Marcus has been telling people a different version of what happened. He hesitated for a second, then just said it. Marcus has been telling people you cheated on him. With Owen. For a moment, I didn't even react. It was like my brain refused to process something that ridiculous. Then it hit. He what? The drummer winced a little. Yeah. He's spinning it like you and Owen went behind his back. Says that's why everything blew up. I felt my grip tighten on the cart handle, my fingers going numb from how hard I was holding on. He's making himself the victim, the drummer added quickly. But honestly, nobody's buying it. Everyone knows how he is. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because it wasn't just about what people believed. It was the fact that he was trying to rewrite everything. Like the last 2 years meant nothing. Like I was the one who did something wrong. I thanked him again, but I barely remember the rest of the conversation. I finished my shopping on autopilot, my thoughts racing the entire time. By the time I got home, the anger hadn't faded. It had sharpened. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, Marcus's words echoing in my head. The lies. The audacity. For once, I didn't overthink it. I opened social media and typed out a single sentence. Marcus and I broke up because he was unfaithful. I'm moving on. I read it once. Then, I hit post before I could talk myself out of it. The response was almost immediate. Within an hour, I had 3 messages sitting in my inbox. The first was from one of Marcus's friends. He said he'd walked in on Marcus and Renee making out at a party months ago. The second said she saw them leaving a hotel together last summer. The third message hit the hardest. Marcus had apparently brought Renee to his birthday dinner and introduced her as his girlfriend, while I was out of town for work. I stared at the screen, my stomach turning. All 3 of them said the same thing at the end, that if I needed them to back me up, they would. I took screenshots of everything and saved them, just in case. My phone rang a few minutes later from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. I answered. Marcus didn't even say hello. He went straight into yelling. What the hell is wrong with you? He snapped. Do you have any idea what you just did? You're ruining my reputation. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear, letting him go off. He kept talking, about how Renee was upset, how people were judging them, how I had no right to air private business online. Private. That word almost made me laugh. I let him rant for a minute. Then I cut him off. No, I said, calm and steady. You ruined your own reputation. He tried to interrupt, but I didn't stop. You cheated. You lied. And now you're trying to blame me for it. There was a brief pause on the other end. And if Renee's upset, I added, my voice colder now, maybe she should have thought about that before getting involved with someone else's boyfriend. Silence. For the first time since I'd known him, Marcus didn't have anything to say. Marcus started to argue again, his voice rising like he thought volume would somehow change reality. I didn't let him finish. I hung up. Then I blocked that number too. For a second, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. Something else. Adrenaline, maybe. Relief. Control. For the first time in a long time, it felt like the story was mine again, and I wasn't giving it back. A month passed. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic transformation. But quietly. Steadily. One afternoon, Owen called and asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. There's this Italian place downtown, he said. I thought, maybe we could celebrate. Celebrate what? I asked, smiling a little. 30 days, he said, since you left him. I laughed softly. It was kind of a strange thing to mark, but also thoughtful in a way that made my chest feel warm. So I said yes. That night, I stood in front of my closet longer than I needed to, eventually settling on a dress I hadn't worn in a while. And for once, getting ready didn't feel like effort. It felt like excitement. Owen showed up exactly on time, something that still caught me off guard, even after weeks of consistency. He opened the door for me, gave me that same easy smile, and for a second, everything felt simple. Good. The restaurant was warm and softly lit, with a table by the window that looked out over the street. We ordered wine, picked up our menus, and I noticed his hands. He kept folding and unfolding his napkin, over and over again. "Hey," I said gently. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said quickly. Then he exhaled. "I'm just a little nervous." I raised an eyebrow. "Nervous? You've been around me basically every day for a month." He let out a quiet, almost embarrassed laugh, then looked down at the table. "Marguerite told me she talked to you," he said. "Oh, that." My stomach flipped, sudden and unexpected. I set my menu down. "I've been thinking about that," I admitted. He looked up then, really looking at me. "About what she said," I continued. "About you." The air between us shifted, subtle, but unmistakable. "I didn't see it before," I said slowly. Or maybe I did, and I just ignored it, because I was so focused on making things work with Marcus. I shook my head lightly. "But when I look back now, you were the best part of those 2 years." His expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. "You showed up," I said, "for everything. The big things, the small things. All of it." I let out a small breath, the words coming easier now. "You remembered my promotion when he forgot. You drove me to the airport at 5 in the morning without complaining. You brought me soup when I was sick. You listened to me talk about work like it actually mattered. And you remembered things I said weeks later." I smiled faintly. I spent so much time chasing someone who barely noticed me, that I missed the person who never stopped choosing me. Owen didn't say anything right away. "There were nights I almost said something," he admitted, his voice rougher than usual. "Watching him waste you like that, and knowing I had no right to say a word about it. That wasn't easy for me either. I wasn't always as calm about it as I probably seemed." He just reached across the table and took my hand. Warm, steady, like him. That's when I noticed the ring. His grandmother's ring. Still on my finger. I'd gotten so used to it being there, I barely thought about it anymore. But now, with his hand wrapped around mine, it felt different, intentional. Like it meant something I hadn't fully let myself understand until now. Owen's eyes dropped to the ring, then lifted back to mine. "I didn't give you that because of the situation," he said quietly. "I gave it to you because, even then, you deserved something better. Something real." My chest tightened. "I've wanted to give you everything for a long time," he admitted, his voice steady, but honest in a way that made it feel heavier. "I just didn't know how to say it without messing everything up." I didn't pull my hand away. "I didn't want to lose you," he continued. "And I knew if I pushed, I might." He paused, then added more softly. "Watching you with Marcus wasn't easy. But being around you, even like that, was still better than not having you in my life at all." That hit deeper than anything else he'd said. I squeezed his hand, grounding both of us. "I don't want to miss this," I said. "Whatever this is, I want to try. For real." For a second, he just looked at me, like he was making sure I meant it. Then he smiled. Not the small, careful smile he usually gave. Something bigger. Brighter. Unfiltered. "Yeah?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "We didn't rush anything after that. We finished dinner, talking like we always did, but there was something new underneath it now. Something that made everything feel a little more intentional. When he drove me home, the car ride was quieter. Not awkward, just full. At my door, he hesitated for half a second. Then he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't uncertain. It was warm, steady, and somehow still gave me butterflies. I realized almost immediately how different it felt. With Marcus, everything had always come with tension, like I was trying to hold on to something that kept slipping. With Owen, it felt like I didn't have to hold on at all. It was just there, safe, easy, real. After that, we didn't pretend anymore. We started dating, officially, and everything about it felt different. Owen showed up. Every time. If we made plans for 7, he was there at 7. Not hours later with excuses. He remembered things I said, even in passing. Like the random comment I'd made about loving a small coffee shop across town. A week later, he showed up early on a Saturday and took me there without saying a word beforehand. He paid attention. He cared. And he made sure I knew it. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. Not just the highlights, the details. He met my friends and remembered who they were, what they did, the things that mattered to them. When I had a big presentation at work, he sent flowers to my office. 2 years with Marcus, and not once had he done anything like that. Nadia wasn't even surprised. She just smiled and said she called it the night of that dinner, the way Owen looked at me when he thought no one noticed. The others agreed, said it had been obvious to everyone except me. Though Nadia did pull me aside for a second, more serious than before. Just take it slow, okay? She said. I know he's great. I just don't want you jumping from one relationship straight into another without giving yourself any room to breathe. It wasn't a warning about Owen, more a warning about me, about the pattern of always needing someone to hold on to. I told her I heard her, and I meant to. Eventually, I invited Owen to Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I was a little nervous. He wasn't. He showed up early, brought dessert, and had my dad laughing within 10 minutes. My mom? She loved him immediately. My mom didn't even try to hide how much she liked him. She kept commenting on how polite he was, how he actually stood up to help clear the table without being asked, how he paid attention when people spoke instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. My dad, meanwhile, had him cornered for most of the evening, talking about construction, business, and anything remotely related. Owen held his own easily, asking questions, listening, engaging, never once checking out of the conversation. It was effortless. After dinner, while Owen and my dad were still talking in the living room, my mom pulled me into the kitchen. She didn't say anything right away, just looked at me for a second, like she was choosing her words carefully. This, she said finally, nodding toward the other room, is what a real partner looks like. I felt something settle in my chest. Someone who shows up, she continued. Someone who respects you. Someone who makes your life better, not harder. I leaned back against the counter, absorbing that. She softened a little then. I'm sorry I didn't say more before. About Marcus. I looked at her. I didn't want to push you away, she said. Sometimes when people are in it, they're not ready to hear it. I stepped forward and hugged her. It's okay, I said. I got there eventually. And I meant it. I thought about what Nadia had said, about slowing down, about not jumping straight from one relationship into the next. And I did think about it, more than once. But the truth was, this didn't feel like jumping into anything. Owen wasn't someone new I was rushing toward. He was someone who'd already been there, steady, for 2 years, long before I ever thought to look. 3 months after everything ended with Marcus, I could finally say something I hadn't felt in a long time. I was happy, not distracted, not pretending, not holding things together out of habit, actually happy. Owen and I started making plans, real ones, not vague ideas that never happened. One night, we were sitting on the couch, scrolling through places online, trying to pick a cabin for a weekend trip. Mountains, quiet, no distractions. As we looked through options, it hit me how unfamiliar this felt. I'd never done this before. Not really. Every time I'd suggested something like this with Marcus, there had always been an excuse. Band practice. A last-minute gig. Renee needing help with something that somehow always came first. Plans with him had never been real until they actually happened. And most of the time, they didn't. But this was already booked. Dates set. Bags mentally packed. Something to look forward to. We were leaving in 2 weeks, and I caught myself counting down the days without even trying. Later that night, I was scrolling through my phone when I saw it. Marcus's band was playing at some bar across town. For a second, I just stared at it. Not because I missed him. Just because it used to matter. Owen noticed the shift in my expression and glanced over. You want to go? He asked lightly. You know, prove you're over it? I looked up at him and realized something. I didn't need to prove anything. Not to him. Not to Marcus. Not even to myself. I don't care, I said simply. And it was the truth. I didn't wonder what Marcus was doing anymore. I didn't check his social media. I didn't think about whether he regretted losing me or not. That chapter didn't pull at me anymore. It was just closed. Owen just smiled when I said I didn't care. That's how I know, he said quietly. You're actually free now. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big moment. Just the truth. A few nights later, we were at his place, stretched out on the couch, watching some random action movie neither of us was really paying attention to anymore. My feet were tucked under me, his arm resting comfortably around my shoulders, his thumb brushing absent-mindedly against my arm. Comfortable. Easy. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. The movie ended, but neither of us moved to turn anything else on. We just stayed there. After a minute, Owen shifted slightly and looked at me. Hey, he said. There was something different in his voice. Softer, but more certain. I turned my head toward him. Yeah? He glanced down at my hand, then back at me. I was thinking... He started, then let out a small breath like he was steadying himself. Maybe we could take my grandmother's ring to a jeweler. Get it sized properly for you. I instinctively looked down at my hand. The ring was still a little too big. I'd been wearing it on my middle finger so it wouldn't slip off, twisting it absent-mindedly, without even realizing it most days. But when I looked back up at him, something clicked. This wasn't just about resizing a ring. My heart started beating faster, the realization settling in before he even said anything else. I know it might seem fast, he continued, his voice steady despite the nerves in his eyes. But I've loved you for 2 years. The room felt very still. When you know, he said, a small smile forming, you just know. He didn't even fully get the question out. He didn't have to, because I already had my answer. Yes, I said, almost laughing through the emotion. Yes. It came easily, naturally. No doubt, no hesitation. Because sometimes the right person isn't someone new. Sometimes they've been there all along, waiting patiently for you to finally see them.